What's up everybody, it's me E-Man from E-Man's Movie Reviews, and today we're going to review Zack Snyder's Justice League. Now this is usually the point in the review where I would start giving you guys the introduction, the good, the bad, the reason, and all that, and we will get to that. But I know that some people out there are probably asking, why is there another Justice League movie in the first place? So let me give you a little quick background information so we can all be caught up. After the tragic and unfortunate passing of Zack Snyder's daughter, he left in the middle of production back in 2017 while shooting the Justice League movie. Rather than delaying the film, the executives at Warner Brothers decided to hire director Joss Whedon to add a little bit more Marvel fun to the Justice League, and thus we got the theatrical version that, well, later on bombed. After years of fan pressure to allow Zack Snyder to complete his own version of the movie, Warner Brothers Pictures did not want to commit any more money into what they thought was a failed project. However, thanks to the advent of streaming platforms, Warner Brothers Entertainment, or HBO and HBO Max, they had the money to invest into Snyder to give him and the fans his own version of the movie. So after $70+ million, we now have an unfiltered version of Justice League to capture what Zack Snyder was hoping for all along. Okay, now that we're all caught up and we're on the same page, let's get into a quick intro. Determined to ensure Superman's ultimate sacrifice was not in vain, Bruce Wayne aligns himself with Diana Prince with plans to recruit a team of metahumans to protect the world from an approaching threat of catastrophic proportions. Alright, enough of that, let's get right into the good.
The good.
Now Zack Snyder does what he does best when it comes to visuals and action. The special effects are stunning and rather hard to turn away from when they're on display. You have a number of different moments in the movie, like when the Flash is running, or the really cool fight scenes that really pop with the bright colors clashing against the darker settings of the film. I think we can also give props to the CGI too. Now, I'm not saying that it was the best, but if we are comparing it to the theatrical version, this was a significant improvement. Having the darker colored tones in the movie was a great way to hide some of the imperfections of the CGI, and that I think was an accomplishment. Now, one of the best highlights in this movie is definitely going to be the big battle scenes. Every single fight was really great to see. The Amazons had some of the most amazing scenes in the movie, especially in the opening of the film, and that big battle in the past with the World versus Darkseid was even better. Now that battle did have some Lord of the Rings vibes to it, but even so, it was still pretty cool. Comic fans will appreciate the subtle cameos from familiar DC heroes or entities. I should also mention that the final fight was carried out very well. I thought Steppenwolf was actually a formidable challenge to the heroes throughout the entire movie. His face-off with them in the final battle was nothing short of brutal. Now, another positive with the Snyder Cut is the additional backstory that we get for some of the characters. Thanks to a now more consistent tone, much of the drama associated with the characters can be realized a little bit more. The additional stories help to provide better context as to what these heroes are all about. While the Flash and Aquaman get a little bit more shine in this, the major heart of this movie is definitely Cyborg. It's a shame that Ray Fisher and so many of his scenes were cut out of the previous Justice League movie, because many of these scenes in the Snyder Cut did his character justice. Not only did they make his character more relatable, but the film demonstrated why he was such a valuable member to the team. Alright, enough of that, let's get right into the bad.
The bad.
Okay, so the very first and most obvious issue is the 4-hour runtime. The primary reason this is a problem is because there are a number of instances where scenes could have been easily cut short or completely removed altogether. For example, it's really unnecessary to have some creepy girl singing about Aquaman as she sniffs his sweater. I mean, yes, we get it that the people in this town or village, they really adore and look up to Aquaman. But this is just another type of scene that you can cut without actually compromising Zack Snyder's vision. Because again, we get the point already. And I get it. Some people might be like, hey, you know what? All of this stuff just contributes to his vision. And to respond to that, I would say more is not always better. But moving on, we got to talk about the writing in this movie. For the most part, the story does work, and we do know the intentions and the goal that Snyder was aiming for. However, the path to get there is rather bumpy. Now, I'm gonna ignore more of these cheesy superhero lines that a character like Deadpool would normally make fun of. I'd also say that I think we have another Martha moment with the supposed connection of the mother boxes to Superman. Beyond that, you'll have scenes that just don't mesh very well and feel like they're shoehorned in for other reasons. For example, one of the major nightmare scenes feels as though it was only put in there to highlight a certain villain rather than actually adding something substantial to the story. And it's stuff like that that supports my previous position about how you could just delete a number of these scenes. Now, I do want to talk about some of the characters in the story. I previously mentioned that the visuals in this movie were really good, but none of that made up for how terrible the Flash looks while he's running. No amount of crazy CGI or lighting or slow motion was going to help this man. Seriously, it's whack and he looks goofy as hell. I'm also a little bit thrown off with the depiction of Superman in the final scenes of the movie. You had a moment of sheer cockiness that almost had him looking a little bit more like a bully than a hero. Now, does this work in the isolation of the one fight at the end to hype fans up? Sure. Yet, when you look at all the work that was put into making him like a gentle giant or a Christ-like figure ever since Man of Steel, it felt like a bit of a departure from all that invested character development. Now, going back to the slow motion thing, Snyder's just gone overboard with it. The issue here is that it's an overplayed technique that begins to lose its effect the more we see it. Don't get me wrong, I think slow motion works very well in many of the speedster scenes. It makes sense to slow down the visuals for a moment in the action that normally would be too hard for the normal eye to follow. In this case, however, we've got a number of moments where the slow motion effect over dramatizes moments. I mean, do we really need Aquaman walking in slow motion drinking whiskey as the waves hit him? Do we really need an entire flashback of a football game all in slow motion? Do the superheroes really need to pose in slow motion as they look off in the sunset? I'm just saying that is kind of corny at this stage of the comic book movie game. Anyway, let's get to the reason.
The reason.
Zack Snyder's Justice League is the unfiltered work of a filmmaker's vision for the world to see. It's also an example of what happens when big ideas go completely unchecked. There's typically little reason for any movie to be 4 hours long in duration. Can it work in some occasions? Yes. But you always have other factors that come into play, like the story, the subject matter, and more importantly, the person telling the story. While Zack Snyder is a fantastic visual storyteller, his grand ideas sometimes become a bit exhaustive, and this film was no exception. Now, for anyone wondering, I would say that you can approach this movie in a similar way that you approached the Batman v Superman Ultimate Edition. The same way that movie gave a much more cohesive tone and story, that's what Zack Snyder's Justice League does here. But I will say that the gap between the theatrical cut and this Snyder Cut is much wider than the previous gap from the Batman v Superman theatrical version and the Ultimate Edition. In other words, the theatrical version of Justice League was so bad, especially in hindsight, that it's going to make this Snyder Cut look way better. Now, it is practically impossible not to compare this to the previous theatrical version of Justice League by Joss Whedon. In an ideal world, we should forget about that movie altogether and judge the Snyder Cut on its own merit. I'd actually recommend not rewatching the previous Justice League movie for that very reason. So when it comes to the rating, for Zack Snyder's Justice League, I've got to give it a 7 out of 10. Despite whatever flaws may be there, I still think that this movie is definitely worth the watch. One of the positives here is the fact that it's going to be streaming on HBO Max, which means that even though it is 4 hours, you could watch this in the comfort of your own home. And the movie is broken up in, I want to say, about like 6 different parts, so you can pause it, take a break, go to the bathroom, grab a snack, whatever you got to do, rather than sitting there and watching it for the whole duration. Now, I actually watched it in the whole duration because I feel like that's the way he made the movie and that's the way it should be seen. But that doesn't mean that you have to watch it that way. Unless you're a hardcore Zack Snyder fan, that 4 hour runtime is going to affect the rewatchability of this movie. Now, if you loved Man of Steel, if you loved Batman v Superman, then I would say you're in store for a treat because you're getting more characters, more background story, and more spectacle when it comes to the action and fight scenes. Either way, check out Zack Snyder's Justice League, which comes out March 18th on HBO Max. So, do you plan on watching the Snyder Cut? If and when you do, come on back to this video and let me know what you think after you've made up your own mind. Anyway, that's all I got for today. Thank you all so much for taking the time to watch my video. I certainly appreciate it. If you're new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I've got more videos and reviews to do for you all, and until next time, I'll see you all later.